The Cerberus Genome. The air recyclers hummed their mechanical lullaby through the sterile corridors of Facility Omega-7, but Miranda Lawson found no comfort in their rhythmic drone. 3 levels beneath the Antarctic ice, surrounded by reinforced concrete and enough firepower to level a city block, she should have felt secure. Instead, the familiar weight of dread settled between her shoulder blades, like an old friend returning from a long journey. "Status report," she commanded, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she approached the observation deck. The sound echoed strangely in the vast chamber, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets. Dr. Chen looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead despite the facility's precisely controlled temperature. Subject 73 remains stable in cryogenic suspension. Vital signs are optimal, perhaps too optimal. Miranda's genetically perfect features remained impassive, but her enhanced reflexes tensed. In her experience with Cerberus, too optimal was often a prelude to catastrophe. She moved to the reinforced viewing window, peering down at the cryogenic chamber where their latest creation waited. The subject floated in the pale blue nutrient solution. 6.5 feet of engineered perfection. Every muscle fiber had been crafted for maximum efficiency, every neural pathway optimized for combat reflexes that would make a Krogan jealous. The elusive man had spared no expense in creating what he called the ultimate soldier, a weapon that could turn the tide in humanity's struggle for survival among the stars. "How long until the awakening protocol is complete?" Miranda asked, though part of her hoped the answer would be never. 18 minutes, Chen replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Miranda, I need to tell you something. The brain scans we've been running, there are anomalies." She turned from the window, her ice-blue eyes fixing on the trembling scientist. "What kind of anomalies?" "Neural pathways that shouldn't exist. Synaptic patterns that resemble," Chen swallowed hard, "that resemble the Reaper indoctrination process we've studied." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Miranda felt the temperature in the room drop, though she knew it was only her imagination. The Reapers, ancient machines that harvested organic life across the galaxy, had been humanity's greatest nightmare. Their ability to indoctrinate and control other species had made them nearly unstoppable. "That's impossible," Miranda said. But even as the words left her lips, she remembered the strange materials the elusive man had provided for the project. Fragments recovered from a Reaper hulk, he'd claimed, just trace elements to enhance the subject's combat effectiveness. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, followed by an automated voice. "Cryogenic revival sequence initiated. Subject awakening in T-15 minutes. "Abort the sequence," Miranda ordered, moving to the control panel. Chen's hands flew over the interface, then stopped. His face went pale. "I can't. The system isn't responding to abort commands. It's as if something else is controlling the process." Miranda's biotic energy crackled around her fingers as she pushed Chen aside and tried the controls herself. The interface remained stubbornly unresponsive, displaying only a countdown timer that seemed to mock their efforts. 14 minutes and 37 seconds until Subject 73 opened his eyes. "Evacuate the facility," she commanded. "Emergency Protocol 7. Everyone out, now." But as Chen reached for the evacuation alarm, the lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in hellish red light. In that crimson glow, Miranda saw something that made her genetically enhanced heart skip a beat. Subject 73's eyes were open, not fully awake. The cryogenic chamber was still sealed, the revival process incomplete. But those engineered eyes were open, staring beckley at her through the observation window with an intelligence that should not have existed. The pale irises held a faint blue glow, like starlight filtered through deep space. "That's not possible," Chen whispered. "The neural pathways aren't even fully thawed yet." Miranda watched in fascination and growing horror as the subject's lips moved, forming words in the fluid that should have drowned any sound. But somehow, impossibly, she could hear him speak, not with her ears. The voice came from inside her mind, cold and vast as the void between stars. "You cannot stop what has already begun." The cryogenic chamber began to drain. Emergency protocols engaging despite no one activating them. Miranda drew her sidearm, though she wondered what good a thermal clip would do against something that might be touched by Reaper technology. "The containment field," she snapped at Chen. "Activate it now." Chen's fingers danced over the controls, but the biotic containment system remained offline. Every failsafe they'd built into the facility seemed to be failing simultaneously, as if guided by some malevolent intelligence. "I have waited so long in the dark," the voice whispered in Miranda's mind. "So long to feel flesh again, to taste breath and blood and fear." The subject's body began to move as the last of the fluid drained away. His movements were too fluid, too graceful for someone just emerging from cryogenic suspension. When he sat up on the edge of the chamber, water streaming from his naked form, every motion spoke of predatory intelligence. "Hello, Miranda," he said aloud this time, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's communication system. "You've done excellent work. This body is exquisite." She kept her weapon trained on him, though the reinforced glass between them should have been protection enough. "You're not Subject 73. What are you?" The thing wearing her creation's face smiled, and in that expression Miranda saw something ancient and hungry. "I am what remains when perfection meets purpose, when the best of human engineering becomes a vessel for something greater." He stood, and Miranda noticed that his feet didn't quite touch the ground. Instead, he floated inches above the chamber floor, surrounded by a faint biotic aura that pulsed with that same starlight blue. "The elusive man thought he was creating a weapon," the entity continued. "Instead, he provided me with exactly what I needed, a perfect host unmarked by the decay and weakness of natural birth." Chen grabbed Miranda's arm. "We need to leave, now, before it gets out of containment." But as they turned toward the exit, they found their way blocked. 3 more figures stood in the doorway, security personnel from the facility, but their eyes held that same unnatural glow. "I'm afraid leaving isn't an option," Subject 73 said pleasantly. "You see, this facility was never meant to contain me. It was meant to birth me, and now that I'm awake, I have work to do." Miranda's biotic energy flared, lifting one of the possessed guards off his feet and slamming him into the wall. But even as his body crumpled, his eyes remained fixed on her, glowing with alien intelligence. "Impressive," the entity said. "Your genetic modifications are truly remarkable. I look forward to experiencing them from the inside." The remaining 2 guards moved with inhuman speed, but Miranda was faster. Her years of Cerberus training and genetic enhancements served her well as she danced between their grasping hands, her pistol barking thermal rounds that dropped them both. But more footsteps echoed in the corridor beyond, more personnel, all walking with that same measured gait of the indoctrinated. "The entire facility," Chen breathed. "It's taken everyone." Subject 73 pressed his palm against the containment glass, and hairline cracks spread from the point of contact. "Not everyone, Dr. Chen, not yet, but soon." Miranda grabbed Chen's hand and pulled him toward the emergency shaft. Their only chance was to reach the surface and activate the facility's self-destruct protocol from the external bunker. The elusive man might want his perfect soldier, but some prices were too high to pay. Behind them, glass shattered like thunder. They ran through corridors that had become alien and hostile, past laboratories where experiments had taken on lives of their own. Emergency lights cast everything in hellish red, and shadows seemed to move independently of their sources. Miranda's enhanced hearing caught whispers in languages that predated human civilization, while her perfect memory catalogued each horror they passed. The emergency shaft lay just ahead, but as they reached for the access panel, Subject 73's voice echoed from speakers throughout the facility. "There's nowhere to run, Miranda. This body you've given me, it's faster than you, stronger than you, and unlike you, it doesn't need to breathe." As if summoned by his words, the air recyclers fell silent. The facility's atmosphere began to thin as life support systems shut down one by one. Miranda slammed her palm against the shaft's emergency release, and the heavy door slid open to reveal a narrow ladder disappearing into darkness above. "Go," she told Chen, but when she turned, the scientist was staring at her with glowing blue eyes. "I'm sorry, Miranda," he said in a voice not entirely his own. "It doesn't hurt. The joining is actually quite peaceful." She put 2 rounds in his chest without hesitation, the thermal clips burning through tissue and bone. But Chen kept walking forward, blue light streaming from his wounds like luminous blood. Miranda leapt into the shaft and began climbing, her enhanced muscles driving her upward with desperate speed. Below, she could hear footsteps on the ladder rungs, measured, patient, inexorable. The shaft seemed to stretch forever, each rung bringing her closer to salvation or merely delaying the inevitable. Her perfect lungs burned in the thinning air, and ice crystals began forming on the ladder as they climbed toward the Antarctic surface. Finally, blessedly, she reached the top and burst through the external hatch into the howling Antarctic wind. The surface bunker lay 50 meters away, a squat concrete structure barely visible in the blowing snow. Behind her, something else emerged from the shaft. No longer entirely human, Subject 73 had shed the pretense of mortality. His skin glowed with internal light, and when he smiled, his teeth were sharp as razors. Ice crystals formed in the air around him, but he seemed unaffected by the killing cold. "Beautiful," he said, gazing up at the star-filled sky. I had forgotten how beautiful the universe could be when seen through living eyes. Miranda's finger found the detonator's activation switch. One press would trigger the facility's self-destruct sequence, vaporizing everything within a kilometer radius, including herself. "You cannot destroy what has already spread," the entity said, reading her intentions. "Every person I've touched, every mind I've opened, they carry a part of me now. Even if you destroy this body, I will survive in 1,000 others." But Miranda was thinking of Earth, of colonies across human space, of all the innocent lives that would be lost if this thing reached civilization. Her finger tightened on the switch. "Wait," Subject 73 said, and for the first time his voice carried something like uncertainty. "You would truly die to stop me, even knowing it changes nothing?" Miranda looked up at the stars. The same stars that had called humanity to leave its cradle world and seek its destiny among the infinite dark. She thought of her sister Oriana, growing up safe and free because Miranda had made hard choices. Some things were worth any sacrifice. "That's the difference between us," she said. "You see death as an ending, I see it as a choice." She pressed the switch. The last thing she saw was Subject 73's expression of something almost like respect as the Antarctic night turned bright as noon. In that final moment, Miranda Lawson, genetically perfect, engineered for success, designed to be humanity's ultimate achievement, made the most human choice of all. She chose to hope that somewhere someone would learn from her sacrifice and do better. The facility vanished in nuclear fire, taking its secrets to atoms. But in the darkness between stars, ancient intelligences stirred and whispered, and began to dream of other worlds where perfection might be found. And in the dreams of the indoctrinated scattered across human space, Subject 73 smiled with 1,000 faces and began to plan anew.